Alright, let's see if I can get this in one go. Hello Internet, what's going on? It's me, Ricardo, the Cynical Critic. Yep, I haven't posted anything in a while, and I thought, you know what? I just discovered something interesting, might as well post about it. Especially since, of course, I hit a little bit of a roadblock when it came to the RWBY reviews. It isn't serious, it's just editing's more tedious than you would imagine. Especially when you hit something that means that you have to take a while to work on it. And right now I have to basically draw quite a decent amount of pictures for a particular video. I have to draw them because I can't look up images about them, because there really aren't any images about them. You'll understand when I post the video. Anyways, well, what is the interesting thing that I wanted to talk about today? Well, some of you may or may not know this, and those who don't know this probably don't know this because they don't really care about it. But that goes to show just the dumps that RWBY has kind of fallen into. But there won't be any RWBY this year. Let that set for a moment that yes, RWBY Volume 9 will not air this year. In fact, it will likely air next year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't know. Yeah, for those who don't know, it looks like RWBY is going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus. They're saying that they're working on it. That's kind of what they said about Volume 8, and basically they had to pack it up and then air it the very day they finished working on it. Which I think is the same thing that sort of happened with Volume 7, and sort of the same thing that happened with Volume 6. You know, they're not very good at managing their time. And I would have called this out immediately. In fact, I think I did call this out, that they should really take the time, especially the writers, to figure out what exactly they're going to be doing, and to basically prepare themselves for the next season. Because, I don't know if you've all noticed, but at least with Monty, he worked his butt off to try to set everything up so that one season basically flowed directly into the next season. So that things would be set up in one season that might have a payoff in the next season. Sad to say, not all that was fulfilled, and that's mainly because of, like I said, the RWBY writers suck. And I'm not just talking about Miles and Carrie. I mean, yes, I am talking about Miles and Carrie, and especially since Miles is no longer working for Rooster Teeth. I'm sorry, now that Miles has basically gone off to do his own thing. You got fired, my boy, and we all saw it coming. You basically attributed nothing but an interesting personality. That was it. And an interesting personality at a company is mostly not enough. But yeah, the RWBY writers, both the original two and the two additional ones that they brought on, well, first of all, they have not really accomplished anything, and second of all, they haven't proven that they could accomplish anything with RWBY. I mean, the more you think about the RWBY story and the plot lines and the plot holes, the more it starts to fall apart. It's one of the reasons why, now that everybody's looking back and thinking about that big plot story unfolding in Volume 6, you guys know which episode I'm talking about because it basically was just an exposition dump. Now that they're thinking about it, they realize it doesn't make a lick of sense. And a lot of things are set up that they don't expect to be paid off properly in the end. Well, I thought to myself, since RWBY is going to be taking a little while, might as well make another video that I did last time. I think I did this with Volume 6 to Volume 7, where, you see, my friend Ryan, who is an anime nut, hadn't finished watching RWBY Volume 6, which, again, shows you just the desperation that the RWBY series is basically getting itself to, where you have anime nuts, and Ryan is an anime nut. He's the guy who will buy the merch, not just, you know, interesting merch like, oh, I'll buy the DVDs and the CDs because I'll be able to watch them whenever I want. No, he'll buy the actual merchandise, such as the wallets. He even bought the headphones. I'm not sure, but I think he's also bought the figurines. And I'll probably make a video about it later on, because there's a lot I want to talk about the RWBY merch, more specifically about the Rooster Teeth merch, and the fact that basically they wanted to make that their moneymaker, but they didn't make enough good merch, and more importantly, they didn't make merch that people would actually want to buy. Sorry to say, but the number of people who watch anime compared to the number of people who are willing to buy the merch of anime is greatly skewed to the former. But anyways, well, I decided might as well bring over the RWBY Volume 6 that I had and basically make him watch it. And then after he watched it, we talked about what he thought about it, and more importantly, what we were expecting about the upcoming RWBY Volume 7, and that's what I'm thinking of doing right now. I'm going to talk about what I thought about RWBY Volume 8, and contrasting that with my expectations, my hopes, and, well, what I actually expect from RWBY Volume 9. So, let's get started. Now, technically, I already did something like this in my first impressions of RWBY Volume 8. You guys can watch that video if you want. The link's going to be in the description, if I remember to put it there. We'll see. But, in any course, RWBY Volume 8, I was expecting it to be bombastic. And that was just by how RWBY Volume 7 ended, with everything basically being set up to basically be a race against Salem. And RWBY Volume 8 managed to meet that expectation. It managed to meet the very bare minimum of that expectation, but it still met the expectation. It failed in a lot of other ways, but it also succeeded in some more, and I was happy about it. But the issue was, and I think this is the issue that I think a lot of people are having right now with RWBY, is that a lot of the successes that are recently having with RWBY, a lot of the things that we are enjoying about it, are immediately followed up by something negative, something bad, whether that be a plot point that seems to be building to an interesting conclusion, and then suddenly it just ends, or it isn't resolved in a satisfactory moment, or characters being built up and explored only to basically destroy any character development that they had. Or, I don't even need to talk about the fandom. I mean, good lord. All it would have taken was Rooster Teeth to stand up and say, hey, you guys either behave yourselves, or we are not going to consider you fans, alright? If you start attacking other people, and we're not choosing which sides, you can be for this side or that side, doesn't matter. If you start getting aggressive and trying to force your ideas on other people, we are not going to consider you fans. That's all they really needed to do, and the reason for that is because they are considered an authority on the RWBY fandom. But they basically just let it stew, and, well, we all saw how that turned out. Good lord, there's nothing more toxic in a fandom than certain people getting involved. And these certain people have certain identities that they hold to that is apart from, well, the actual identity of who they are. But anyways, well, as I said in my first impressions, RWBY Volume 8 was neither good nor was it bad. It was mediocre at best. And as always, that's a problem, because there's so much more content out there that is, especially nowadays, is far more accessible to everyone than it was before. And I'm not just talking about, sailing the high seas. I mean, the number of people who are able to get subscriptions to these certain networks simply because they have a particular internet provider is astounding. And granted, I saw that coming. The moment people started whipping out their own networks, I realized, listen, we don't have enough money to buy 16 different subscriptions just to watch basically a single show in each of those subscriptions. So get ready for this to happen more and more, where they start collaborating, and more importantly, where they don't sell their subscriptions to you, they more or less sell it to a internet provider, and that internet provider provides it to you just because you went with them. But regarding Volume 9, what's going on with it? I mean, have I watched the trailer? Have I kept up to date? No. I don't watch trailers anymore. I try not to. And the main reason for that is I usually can figure out how well the movie is going to be and generally what the story is going to circle around just by watching the trailer. And that's mainly because people who make trailers nowadays don't know how to make trailers. It's about getting people hyped, okay? And the best thing to do that is not to show off the best parts, but to tease the best parts, and more importantly, give us an idea of what's going on. We want to see interesting characters and to experience entertaining stories. Show us that, and that will get us interested into watching your show or movie. Sad to say, they don't have that anymore, and I've lost count of the number of movies I've ruined for myself just because I watched the trailer. So no, I haven't watched the trailer for RWBY Volume 9, but considering what happened in RWBY Volume 8, I think we can make an educational guess on what's going to happen. So, let's go over my wants, my hopes, and my actual expectations of RWBY Volume 9. And the best way to explore that would be, of course, going over the three main things that RWBY Volume 9 has to focus on. The first being, of course, character. I mean, think about any show, any movie, any video game out there. What are all the best ones have in common? That's right, characters. It's really hard to get into a story unless you have an interesting character that you can get into the story with. And, well, sad to say, RWBY had some of the best characters out there. And the main reason for that is just because they felt so natural. They felt so attuned with one another. Their interactions with one another felt real. Granted, that started to go downhill after Volume 3, and basically everything started to feel scripted. And, well, RWBY Volume 7 and 8 were basically the epitome of that, where characters were basically making choices that they normally wouldn't, and in some cases, some characters were making choices and doing things that just made no sense because there was no build-up to it. But anyways, my hopes for RWBY Volume 9 is that they actually explore it. I mean, considering the fact that our characters are likely going to be separated in the beginning of Volume 9, I'm hoping that they take that time to actually work on each of the characters. Likelihood by pairing certain ones up. And by exploring their characters, not the relationship between the two, because let's face it, that should have been explored way, way back. Now it's our characters basically becoming who they're supposed to be. Granted, that was supposed to happen back in Volume 5 and 6, but yeah. No. They didn't do that, so they have to do it now. They have to explore the characters on who they're going to be. And let's just go through the main four, for instance. RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Newt. RWBY, she needs to become a leader, not the wishy-washy, everyone listen to me, I'm going to inspire you with a speech leader. No, she needs to be a leader who takes action. Understands that her action have consequences, and more importantly, accepts whatever consequences be and takes responsibility for it. She needs to be the active protagonist in this story. I'm not sure how they can get about that, but likelihood they can use this current failure to basically bolster her up. Instead of her getting down in the dumps, she basically reaffirms herself and says, you know what, we're alive, and as long as we're alive, we're going to keep fighting, and that's what I'm going to do. As for Weiss, well, her character was actually an interesting one that I think that everyone who liked Weiss, even just a little bit, got behind. And that was the fact that her father, regardless of whether or not he was a misogynist asshole or not, that her father had made some mistakes. And because of those, people had suffered. Now, they weren't her mistakes. But just because the sins of the fathers aren't implicitly passed down onto their children, they don't die with them. And so Weiss basically was set on a path to take back her company and to take back responsibility of everything that her company does, and which was an interesting arc because it paired very nicely with Blake. Now, Blake, I've already explained that her arc was supposed to be basically a leader's redemption story. She was supposed to be the leader of the White Thing. I mean, her parents were more or less leaders before her, but they decided to step down for personal reasons. We can't really judge them too harshly about that because they wish to have a more peaceful life. They wish to have a family, and that's what they did. But a leader needed to be put in position, and the sad to say is that they basically just left it to whoever was going to take it. We got Sienna, and while Sienna eventually led to Adam, and we all know what happened to Adam. And while I could talk for days, again, about how Adam's character was one of the most wasted characters there, simply because how he tied into so many other characters, Blake was supposed to take back the White Thing, and we never got that, which was very sad considering the fact that, well, the Faunus sort of played an important part in Volume 8. Basically, they're just a MacGuffin. They weren't really a character or even a struggle. So they really need to focus on Blake when it comes to her understanding her role as a leader for the White Fang and how she is basically the intermediate person between the Faunus and the humans. And you really don't have to go into deep of a character discovery between the Faunus. Basically, they're a group of intelligent species out there that are slightly different from the humans. They have several tribes, they have several different kingdoms, just like the humans. One of the most famous kingdoms, of course, is Menagerie, and because of various reasons here and there, they've fought against humans, humans have fought against them. Basically, no one's in the right and everyone's in the wrong. And that's where, of course, Blake comes into play, acting as a way to mend the wounds and bring the peace. And they have to focus on that aspect of her because she is supposed to be a crucial role when it comes to fighting against Salem. Basically, she's supposed to provide the Faunus army if you look at it through a story writing perspective. Now, as for the final character, Yang, they really just need to get over her doughy, stupid personality right now, where basically she is, she's no longer fun. And worse is that they tried to act like she's fun by throwing in some interesting points, but that was never Yang. And to be honest, it's all the worst that they try to inject some joy back into her, and then immediately follow up with some solemn nature, and it's not working. They need to get her back to be a bit more of a high spirit. For her, she was the joy and the light of the team. While RWBY was supposed to bring the optimism and hope, Weiss was supposed to bring the realism, Blake was supposed to bring the understanding that who they are as individuals, Yang was supposed to basically corral them all together. She was the mother figure, and it's been horrible for her that they basically have gone away from that. And it's an understandable reason why they went away from that, because they had no idea how to deal with her and her mother, and, well, as I said, the RWBY writers were pretty terrible. So they have to focus on that, bringing Yang back as her motherly character, as someone who can bear the burdens of the world, the burdens of her teammates, just to keep them together. That's my hopes. My expectations? I don't think they're going to really do that when it comes to RWBY. RWBY's likely going to continue to be that naive optimism, even though that naive optimism was just the seed to her being the leader that she needs to be. Basically, I'm pretty sure they're going to make her still act like a child, even though she's technically supposed to be almost 18 by now, I think. So she's supposed to be an adult, and she's gone through so much that she should have already matured mentally. As for Weiss, well, they've already destroyed any chance for her to have her redemption arc with what they did with her father. And to be honest, I think she's just going to be the usual whiny brat that she was before, considering the situations that they're in right now, and I don't expect them to do much with either Weiss or RWBY. As for Blake and Yang, I know exactly what they're going to try to do with them, and it's because they've been trying to do the same thing since Volume 6. And the reason for that was completely obvious, because it wasn't until Volume 6 that they actually started doing it. Volume 5, people can argue that they were trying to bring the two together, but it was clear that they weren't trying to bring them together as a romantic couple. They were trying to bring them back together as their friendship, for obvious reasons. And but after while Volume 4 did get some criticism, many people were willing to forgive them because Monty had recently died, and so they were basically allowing some leeway. But when Volume 5 hit, and just a horrendous ending of Volume 5, people were fed up, and understandably so. And so, of course, they were having to fall back on certain tropes in order to entice a particular group into basically supporting them. And that particular group is not the kind that you want supporting you, because basically as soon as they either get what they want, or it is confirmed that they'll never get what they want, they'll either dump you or turn on you. There really isn't any other way that's going to turn out. And sad to say, there's just not enough of those particular people to really support Rooster Teeth. I mean, first of all, those people really don't buy that much merch. I mean, a few of them do, but they were going to buy merch regardless, because that's their personality. But, yeah, when it comes to RWBY Volume 9, I'm pretty damn sure they're going to pair Blake and Yang up, and they're going to basically bring them together as some sort of teasing a romantic relationship. Because as I said, it's impossible for them to try and bring them together as an actual romantic relationship. It's just been way too damn long for that. And there's already been a romantic relationship set up for Blake and Sun. So we'll see how that all goes. As for the second thing, story. What I want them is to focus on how this is all going to end. We're 9 years into the show. This show needs to be ending soon. And the reason for that is quite simple. You can't have a show go on for too long without people getting apathetic. Which means that basically any newcomers will not really want to get into the show because they have to watch 9 years worth of content. So let's see. Yeah, that's like almost, I'd have to say somewhere around like 36 hours worth of content when it comes to RWBY. Give or take, depending on whether or not you watch the character shorts, trailers, and of course, additional World of Remnant content. But they're generally not going to get involved. You're losing the potential to entice a new audience, and your current audience is falling away. And worse is that with each season, some may come back, but more leave. And so you need to wrap up the story, because we all like a story continuing, but we love an ending. We love that finality, and the end kind of deal. So they need to finish wrapping up exactly what they want to be the end goal. Right now, we have no idea what the end goal is. We have an understanding of what Salem wants, but we don't understand what her end goal is. What exactly does she intend to do with the relics? I mean, it doesn't make like a sense if you think about it. I mean, she brings back those gods. She actually expects them to kill her. Likely they'll just rinse them her clean, and this time they might stick her ass on the moon, make it sure that she's all alone for all eternity. Does she expect to use them to fight against them? Their powers, the relics' powers came from them, so we already saw what happened with that. So again, we have no idea what her end goal is, and I don't think the writers either. As far as I can tell, and this is my expectations, is that they have been basically winging it ever since Volume 3. And that's because, like I said, they're pretty terrible writers. They basically come in, do their job, and leave and don't care. At least Monty made sure to understand that as he was in a very crucial role to the story and characters, when he clocked out on the day, it wasn't over for him. He still had problems that he needed to solve. He still had things that he needed to do. And that's why, even though he wasn't perfect, and even though there are several things I would deeply disagree with him on, I had to admire the man for his dedication and his hard work. And I just don't think that the writers have either of that for the RWBY story. So my hopes is that the RWBY story will start actually taking up, and then we'll understand how everything's going to go, and we'll get an idea of what we expect things to go. But more importantly, I think my expectations are going to be that it's basically just going to be another winging episode. They say that they're going to be working on it for more, but that costs money, and let's face it, they're not going to be doing that. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. And the third thing, world. Now, already they've pretty messed up that big time when it comes to world. I mean, we did get some of Vale back in Volume 1 and 2, and we had an understanding of what it was like. We didn't get enough. And that's a horrible thing, because we're basically saving the world with this story, and, well, why save the world when we have no idea what it's like? I mean, we did get something with Atlas, but not really, and it was pretty piss poor. And we got like nothing when it came to Mistral, and I expect that we won't get enough when it comes to Vacuo. My hope is that they don't, is that they take the time to focus on the worlds that they're building, that they make each of the episodes a full 24 minutes so that we can explore the world, not be in an exposition dump. We don't need that, but just some well-placed visuals. Taking some time to let us absorb them, and that will be more than enough for us to figure out exactly what is exactly this new world that our main four find themselves in. What exactly is Vacuo like compared and contrasted with the other four kingdoms, and just how all our characters fit into this world. So that's my hope. My expectations is that, once again, they'll basically use a lot of exposition. They'll basically just set some things up and then immediately not really pay them off. And, well, my hopes and my wants is that RWBY Volume 9 starts to end the series and ends it on the high note that we all want. Because at the end of the day, people like me who criticize RWBY, we don't want RWBY to be bad. We criticize it because we need people to see these issues. More importantly, we need the writers, we need the directors, the animators, we need anybody who's working on the actual show to see the flaws so that they can fix them. More importantly, not just for the show, but for any further projects that they decide to work on. And well, if it does well, guess what? We're going to be happy about that. If it does well, it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for us because we get to see an enjoyable series. It's a win for the fans because they get to see their series back in the limelight. And of course, it's a win for the creators because they've created something successful. My expectations is not that. Once again, just given everything that's happening with Rooster Teeth, basically to the point where it's... I do expect the company to be completely liquidized soon. If not because of the fact that they've been absorbed into other companies right now, but also because, let's face it, it was fine when it was its own company, but just the name alone, Rooster Teeth, anybody understands where that name came from, they're likely not going to want to keep that image around any longer, especially since I think they're trying to get into kiddie films. They're really desperate right now, like I said. So I don't expect RWBY Volume 9 to be all that great. I hope it is, because if it is, as I said, it's a win for everyone. But I don't expect it to be. We'll see how my expectations go, considering the fact that we have another year to wait for RWBY Volume 9, which, to be honest, I don't think is going to end very well. Especially since Rooster Teeth isn't really popping out any other further content. I mean, and I will be going over these. I am actually in the process of trying to just whip up a video for them and probably just be this kind of where I don't have any script and I just speak my mind and I go over it. but I will be going over the RWBY comics, the RWBY manga, and the RWBY books that they've all released, and basically nobody really cares about. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, RWBY, I think, still has at least maybe like 1 million or so people who will actually watch it. It's a fair number, not a really great number, considering, again, just how many shows are out there. I mean, right now, as I said, when it came to Volume 8, I was far more interested in watching shows that I didn't think I'd like than I was with watching Volume 8. So, Rooster Teeth has got a lot of competition, and the fact that they're doing things that doesn't seem to be fitting the role that they need to be playing as basically close to the fans. I mean, that is the one thing I think should be done. I've already stated what I hope, I've already stated what I expect, but here's something that I state what should be done. Rooster Teeth needs, and specifically the RWBY crew, needs to be honest. They need to be forthcoming to the fans. State their opinions, and more importantly, state their responsibility over the project. If they screw up, they can't go, well, you know, things were hard. They have to say, you know what, guys? Regardless of things being hard and everything, we messed up. It came out bad, and we're terribly sorry about that. We are looking for criticism right now, specifically from people who are willing to be able to explain those criticisms, because we're looking for any way to better ourselves, so that we can bring you some awesome content. That's what Rooster Teeth and RWBY need right now, is to bring themselves back into the good graces with their fans. Rooster Teeth had something that almost no other company had at the time, and that was the fact that they had a very close relationship with their fans, to the point where it almost was personal. And the moment they started to sell themselves out, well, we saw them become less and less personal, and because of that, we were less and less interested in supporting them. I mean, think back to their whole Laser Team movie, the movie that was basically an hour and a half of a Rooster Teeth short. Yes, some of it was good, but on the whole, there's a reason why the Laser Team 2 basically just was farted out onto their network. But we were willing to support them. Hell, I supported them. It's one of the reasons why I got a ticket. Yes, I actually got a ticket, drove out to the one theater that was playing it in like a 50-mile radius in my location, and I watched it. And I was happy to laugh along with everyone else at some of the jokes, and I was happy to cheer when we saw some familiar faces. But, yeah, if Rooster Teeth doesn't get a hold on that, if Rooster Teeth doesn't crack down on being responsible and taking responsibility for the actions, we're not expecting you to bring out the whips and chains and start going at yourself. We just simply want you to acknowledge the fact that you guys screwed up. And you screwed up big time. And if you're able to do that, for you, mostly, it'll allow you to acknowledge your screw-up and hopefully move past it. But, yeah. Got a good year, people. A good year before RWBY Volume 9 hits Limelight. And, be honest, I hope that I actually do take the time to make it good and to make it well and to make it entertaining again. I mean, for crying out loud, it doesn't need to be all just somber and solace. I mean, that was basically the tagline for RWBY. The fact that it was an anime about schoolgirls with guns that were also swords, and swords that were also guns, fighting monsters and having a grand old time. Doesn't mean that you have to just throw out any semblance of seriousness, but yeah. I hope that RWBY does well. I don't expect it to. And Rooster Teeth needs to get back into the good graces of the fans, because that's the only way that RWBY will survive. Because to be honest, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who really care about the fact that RWBY is not going to air this year. Anyways, guys, tell me what you think in the comment section below. do you care about the fact that RWBY's not going to be airing this year? Do you think that Rooster Teeth actually will be working on it? Or do you think this is just because they really don't have the resources and the money to actually get it done this year? Especially considering, again, last year. But anyways, I've been Ricardo. I hope that you all are doing well, and I'll get back to working on some videos. You guys take care. Toodles!